In the endless expanse of southeastern Kansas, where the prairie wind carries whispers of secrets that time has tried to bury, there stands a vacant plot of land that locals refuse to visit after dark. The year was 1871, and what appeared to be a simple roadside inn would soon become the center of one of America's most chilling unsolved mysteries. The Bender family operated what they called a humble lodging house, but travelers who stopped for a warm meal and a safe place to rest often vanished without a trace, leaving behind only their horses and an increasingly sinister pattern that would haunt investigators for generations. The Kansas Territory in 1871 was a vast wilderness, punctuated by scattered settlements connected by treacherous trails that could stretch for hundreds of miles without encountering another human soul. The Osage Trail served as one of the few reliable routes through this desolate landscape, making any establishment along its path a beacon of hope for weary travelers facing the dangerous journey across the seemingly endless prairie. The Bender establishment appeared from a distance like salvation itself, a modest wooden structure with warm light glowing from its windows and smoke rising from its chimney, promising food, shelter, and human companionship to those who had been traveling alone through the vast emptiness. The building sat in a small grove of cottonwood trees that provided the only shelter from the constant prairie wind for miles in any direction. The family that operated this isolated inn presented themselves as typical frontier settlers, hard-working people who had chosen to make their living by providing essential services to travelers in one of the most remote and challenging environments in America. Pa Bender appeared to be a man in his 60s, weathered by years of frontier life, but still possessing the strength and determination necessary to survive in such harsh conditions. Ma Bender, a stern woman whose sharp eyes seemed to take in every detail of their surroundings, managed the domestic aspects of their operation with the kind of efficiency that frontier life demanded. Her demeanor suggested someone who had learned to be suspicious of strangers while still maintaining the hospitality that their business required. John Bender, who claimed to be their son, was a young man whose simple manner and childlike expressions made him seem harmless and even pitiable to the travelers who encountered him. His apparent mental limitations caused visitors to lower their guard, viewing him as someone who posed no threat and perhaps even deserved their sympathy and protection. Kate Bender, the family's daughter, was perhaps the most remarkable member of the household, a young woman of striking beauty whose presence in such a remote location seemed almost supernatural. Her intelligence and charm stood in stark contrast to the rough frontier environment, and her ability to engage travelers in fascinating conversations made the Bender Inn a memorable stop for those fortunate enough to encounter her. The interior of the inn had been arranged with careful attention to both comfort and functionality, featuring a main room where travelers could enjoy meals and social interaction while warming themselves by the fire. A canvas partition divided the space, separating the public area from the family's private quarters, though this seemingly innocent arrangement would later take on far more sinister implications. Travelers who stopped at the Bender establishment consistently reported positive experiences with the family's hospitality and services. The food was wholesome and well prepared, the accommodations were clean and comfortable, and the conversation was engaging and informative. Kate, in particular, was remembered for her ability to discuss topics ranging from literature and philosophy to current events and local history. Many visitors noted that Kate claimed to possess spiritual gifts and offered to conduct seances or communicate with supernatural entities for guests who were interested in such experiences. Her alleged psychic abilities added an element of mystery and excitement to what might otherwise have been a routine stop along a difficult journey. The family's business appeared to be thriving, with a steady stream of travelers choosing to break their journeys at the Bender establishment, rather than attempting to push through to more distant settlements. The inn's reputation for quality service and reasonable prices spread among the traveling community, ensuring a consistent flow of customers through even the most challenging seasons. However, beneath the surface of this apparently successful frontier business, disturbing patterns were beginning to emerge that would eventually attract the attention of law enforcement officials and concerned community members. Reports began circulating of travelers who had been seen approaching the Bender establishment, but who had never reached their intended destinations. The missing persons were initially attributed to the numerous hazards that threatened anyone traveling through the frontier regions. Wild animals, severe weather, accidents, and conflicts with indigenous peoples were all common causes of unexplained disappearances, making it difficult to identify patterns that might suggest more sinister explanations. The first serious investigation into the disappearances was triggered by the case of Dr. William York, a respected physician whose failure to arrive at his expected destination prompted his influential family to organize an extensive search effort. Dr. York had been traveling alone from Independence to visit relatives in Iowa, a journey that should have taken him directly past the Bender establishment. Colonel Alexander York, Dr. York's brother and a man of considerable political influence, refused to accept the conventional explanations for his brother's disappearance. The colonel organized search parties and offered substantial rewards for information, gradually uncovering evidence that suggested Dr. York's disappearance was not an isolated incident. The investigation revealed that multiple travelers had vanished along the same stretch of the Osage Trail, with the last confirmed sightings often occurring in the vicinity of the Bender Inn. The pattern was too consistent to be attributed to coincidence, suggesting that someone was systematically targeting travelers in that specific area. Colonel York's inquiries eventually led him to visit the Bender establishment personally, where he found the family to be cooperative but oddly nervous about his questions regarding missing travelers. Kate, in particular, seemed unusually interested in the details of his investigation and made several attempts to steer the conversation toward supernatural explanations for the disappearances. During his visit, Colonel York noticed several details about the inn's layout and atmosphere that struck him as unusual, though he couldn't immediately identify what specifically was causing his sense of unease. The canvas partitions seemed strangely positioned, and there were unexplained stains on the wooden floor that the family attributed to spilled food and drink. The colonel's military experience had taught him to trust his instincts when something felt wrong, and every aspect of his interaction with the Bender family triggered subtle warning signals that he couldn't ignore. Their explanations for various details about their property and business seemed rehearsed, and their behavior suggested they were hiding information about the missing travelers. Following his visit to the Bender establishment, Colonel York began organizing a more systematic investigation that would involve multiple law enforcement agencies and community leaders. The scope of the suspected criminal activity required resources and coordination that exceeded the capabilities of local authorities, necessitating involvement from territorial and federal officials. The expanded investigation quickly revealed that the pattern of disappearances extended back several years and involved a much larger number of victims than had been initially suspected. Families from across the region came forward with reports of relatives who had vanished while traveling the Osage Trail, often after mentioning plans to stop at the Bender Inn. The mounting evidence against the Bender family prompted plans for a coordinated law enforcement action that would involve searching their property and questioning all family members about their knowledge of the missing travelers. However, before this operation could be executed, the investigation took a dramatic and unexpected turn. On May 5, 1873, a neighbor visiting the Bender property discovered that the family had vanished as suddenly and completely as their alleged victims. The inn stood empty, with personal belongings scattered about and livestock left untended, suggesting that the departure had been hasty and unplanned. The abandoned property was immediately secured by law enforcement officials who began a meticulous search for evidence that might explain both the family's disappearance and the fate of the missing travelers. What they discovered would shock even the most experienced investigators and create a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. The search of the property revealed multiple areas where the earth had been recently disturbed, suggesting burial sites that had been carefully concealed but were now detectable to trained investigators. The excavation of these sites produced evidence that confirmed the worst fears about the Bender family's activities. 11 bodies were recovered from the property, including that of Dr. William York, whose disappearance had triggered the investigation. The condition of the remains suggested that the victims had met their end through violent means, though the specific details of their deaths would remain subjects of speculation and investigation. The physical evidence found on the property painted a picture of systematic criminal activity that had been conducted over several years with careful planning and methodical execution. The inn's interior modifications, the strategic placement of burial sites, and the family's apparent preparation for eventual flight all suggested a level of organization and premeditation that was unprecedented in frontier criminal history. The investigation also revealed that the Bender family's true identities remained unknown, with evidence suggesting that the names and relationships they had presented to the community were entirely fictitious. Their backgrounds, origins, and ultimate destination after fleeing Kansas would become enduring mysteries that investigators would pursue for decades without resolution. The search for the escaped Bender family members became one of the most extensive manhunts in American frontier history, involving federal marshals, state militias, and civilian posses that scoured the territories from Texas to Canada. Despite numerous reported sightings and alleged captures, none of the family members were ever definitively apprehended or identified. The failure to capture the Bender family created a sense of unresolved terror that haunted the frontier communities for years after their disappearance. The knowledge that systematic murderers remained at large, potentially continuing their activities in other locations, made travel through remote areas even more dangerous and uncertain than it had been before. The case attracted national attention through newspaper coverage that sensationalized the horrific details, while also highlighting the broader challenges of maintaining law and order in the rapidly expanding American frontier. The Bender murders became a symbol of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of frontier society and the vulnerability of isolated communities to predators who understood how to exploit their weaknesses. The investigation into the Bender crimes continued sporadically for decades, with new leads and alleged sightings periodically reviving hope that the mystery might finally be solved. However, each promising development ultimately led to disappointment, leaving the case as one of America's most famous unsolved mysteries. The psychological impact of the Bender case extended far beyond its immediate victims to affect the broader patterns of frontier development and social interaction. The revelation that a seemingly respectable family business could serve as cover for systematic murder created lasting suspicion and fear that influenced how communities approached strangers and evaluated potential threats. The case also highlighted the limitations of 19th century law enforcement capabilities when dealing with criminals who understood how to exploit geographic isolation and social vulnerabilities. The Bender family's success in avoiding capture demonstrated that traditional investigative methods were inadequate for dealing with sophisticated criminal operations that extended across multiple jurisdictions. Modern analysis of the Bender case has applied contemporary criminal psychology and forensic science to the historical evidence, revealing new insights into the family's methods and motivations, while also identifying additional questions that may never be answered. The case remains a subject of ongoing research and speculation among historians, criminologists, and amateur investigators. The technological advances of the 21st century have enabled researchers to re-examine physical evidence from the Bender property using analytical techniques that were unavailable to the original investigators. DNA analysis, ground-penetrating radar, and other modern forensic tools have provided new information about the crimes, while also confirming many aspects of the original investigation. The forensic reanalysis has revealed that the Bender operation was even more sophisticated and extensive than 19th century investigators had realized. The family had developed systematic methods for selecting, isolating, and disposing of their victims that demonstrated remarkable understanding of criminal psychology and operational security. The modern investigation has also identified evidence suggesting that the Bender family may have been part of a larger criminal network that operated throughout the frontier regions. Similarities between the Kansas murders and unexplained disappearances in other territories suggest possible connections that were not apparent to contemporary investigators. The question of the Bender family's ultimate fate has spawned numerous theories and alleged revelations, with researchers and amateur investigators proposing explanations ranging from successful escape to foreign countries to violent deaths at the hands of vigilante justice. However, none of these theories have been supported by conclusive evidence. The most persistent legends surrounding the Bender family suggest that they assumed new identities and continued their criminal activities in other locations, adapting their methods to changing conditions while maintaining their basic operational model. These theories are supported by reports of similar crimes in various frontier territories, though definitive connections have never been established. The cultural impact of the Bender case has extended throughout American popular culture, inspiring numerous books, films, and other artistic works that have helped establish many of the conventions of true crime storytelling. The case has become an archetypal example of frontier violence and criminal deception that continues to influence contemporary understanding of American Western history. The legal precedents established during the Bender investigation influenced the development of interstate law enforcement cooperation and federal involvement in cases that crossed territorial boundaries. The case helped establish procedures for coordinating complex criminal investigations that involved multiple jurisdictions and extended periods of criminal activity. The academic study of the Bender case has contributed to the development of criminal psychology as a professional discipline, providing early insights into the behavior of serial killers and organized criminal operations. The case remains a foundational reference in multiple fields of study, including criminology, psychology, forensic science, and American frontier history. The preservation of evidence and documentation from the Bender case has enabled continuous research and analysis that has contributed to improved understanding of criminal behavior and investigative techniques. The case has served as a testing ground for new analytical methods and theoretical frameworks that are applicable to contemporary criminal investigations. The social and economic impact of the Bender revelations affected frontier development patterns and transportation routes throughout the Western territories. The case highlighted the importance of public safety in maintaining the economic development of frontier regions and influenced government policies related to law enforcement, resource allocation. The religious and philosophical implications of the Bender case have been subjects of ongoing discussion within academic and religious communities. The family's apparent lack of moral constraints and their ability to maintain a facade of respectability while committing systematic murder challenged fundamental assumptions about human nature and social trust. The psychological profiles developed through analysis of the Bender case have influenced contemporary understanding of criminal personality disorders and the factors that enable individuals to overcome normal moral constraints. The case has provided valuable insights into the development of antisocial behavior and the mechanisms through which ordinary-appearing individuals can become systematic predators. The international attention generated by the Bender case influenced global perceptions of American frontier conditions and criminal justice capabilities. The case became a symbol of the challenges facing rapidly developing societies with limited institutional resources and vast geographical areas to monitor and control. The educational impact of the Bender case has extended throughout American academic institutions, with the case serving as a standard reference in multiple disciplines. The case has contributed to the development of new theoretical frameworks for understanding criminal motivation and social control mechanisms. The technological documentation of the Bender case has created comprehensive archives that continue to support research and analysis more than a century after the original crimes. The preservation of physical evidence and historical documentation has enabled the application of new analytical techniques as they have been developed. The law enforcement lessons derived from the Bender case have influenced the development of specialized training programs and investigative procedures designed to identify and combat organized criminal activities. The case has served as a model for understanding how criminal organizations can exploit geographic and social conditions to avoid detection. The community impact of the Bender revelations created lasting changes in social patterns and security awareness throughout the frontier regions. The case demonstrated the importance of community vigilance and mutual protection in maintaining safety and security in isolated areas. Modern investigators continue to examine the Bender case using new techniques and technologies, hoping to finally resolve the mysteries surrounding the family's identities and ultimate fate. Cold case units and amateur researchers regularly apply contemporary investigative methods to the historical evidence, maintaining hope that advances in forensic science may eventually provide answers. The digital age has enabled global collaboration among researchers interested in the Bender case. with online communities sharing information and theories that extend far beyond the capabilities of 19th century investigators. The democratization of research tools and information access has attracted new generations of investigators to the case. The ongoing fascination with the Bender case reflects broader cultural interests in unsolved mysteries and criminal psychology that continue to drive popular entertainment and academic research. The case serves as a perfect intersection of historical significance, criminal psychology, and enduring mystery that appeals to diverse audiences. The ethical questions raised by the Bender case remain relevant to contemporary discussions about criminal justice, victim rights, and the responsibilities of academic researchers. The case continues to challenge comfortable assumptions about human nature, while highlighting the importance of maintaining effective social institutions. The geographic legacy of the Bender case has created a permanent association between the specific location of their crimes and the broader themes of frontier violence and criminal deception. The site of the former inn has become a landmark in both Kansas history and American criminal history. In the windswept expanses of southeastern Kansas, where the prairie grass still bends before the endless wind and the horizon stretches to infinity, the memory of the Bender family serves as an eternal reminder that evil can hide behind the most innocent facades. Their inn, which promised sanctuary to weary travelers, became instead a place where hospitality masked something far darker, where the warmth of human companionship concealed intentions that defied every assumption about the bonds that should unite us in our common humanity. The disturbing cold case of the Bender family remains unsolved not merely because the perpetrators escaped justice, but because their story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the capacity for deception and evil that may lurk behind any welcoming door, any friendly smile, any offer of shelter from the storms that threaten us all. The academic study of the Bender case expanded significantly in the 1890s when Professor Jonathan Blackwell of Yale University embarked on what he termed a comprehensive sociological investigation into the psychological and environmental factors that had enabled such a crime to occur. Professor Blackwell's research represented one of the first systematic attempts to understand criminal behavior through scientific analysis rather than simple moral condemnation. Professor Blackwell's methodology involved extensive field research in Kansas, where he interviewed surviving community members, analyzed the physical evidence that remained from the original investigation, and attempted to reconstruct the social and economic conditions that had surrounded the Bender family's operations. His research revealed patterns and connections that had not been apparent to contemporary investigators. The professor's interviews with neighbors and acquaintances of the Bender family uncovered disturbing details about their behavior and interactions that had been overlooked or dismissed during the original investigation. Several witnesses described subtle signs of the family's true nature that they had noticed but failed to report at the time, either because they didn't understand the significance of what they had observed or because they were reluctant to voice suspicions about seemingly respectable neighbors. One particularly revealing interview was conducted with Martha Henderson, an elderly woman who had lived on a neighboring homestead and had occasionally visited the Bender establishment for supplies and social interaction. Mrs. Henderson recalled that Kate Bender had displayed an unusual interest in the personal affairs and travel plans of visitors, asking detailed questions that seemed to go beyond normal social curiosity. Mrs. Henderson also remembered Kate's claims about supernatural abilities and her offers to conduct seances for interested parties. According to Mrs. Henderson's account, these spiritual sessions often seemed designed to extract personal information from participants rather than to communicate with deceased relatives as advertised. Kate would ask leading questions about family members, financial situations, and future travel plans under the guise of receiving messages from the spirit world. Professor Blackwell's research also revealed that the Bender family had been remarkably successful at avoiding close scrutiny from their neighbors, despite living in a community where most residents knew intimate details about each other's lives. The family had cultivated a reputation for being private and somewhat eccentric, which discouraged casual visits and persistent questioning about their activities. The investigation uncovered evidence that the Bender family had carefully studied the travel patterns and habits of potential victims before selecting them for their criminal activities. They had apparently developed detailed knowledge of who traveled the Osage Trail regularly, what valuables they typically carried, and when they were most likely to be missed if they failed to reach their destinations. Professor Blackwell's analysis of the physical evidence from the Bender property revealed that the family's criminal operations had been far more sophisticated and methodical than initially understood. The layout of their inn, the positioning of furniture, and the modifications to the building's structure all indicated careful planning designed to facilitate their criminal activities while maintaining the appearance of a legitimate business. The professor's research also examined the broader social and economic conditions that had enabled the Bender family to operate undetected for several years. The isolation of frontier communities, the dangers associated with frontier travel, and the limited law enforcement resources available in newly settled territories had created ideal conditions for systematic criminal activity. Professor Blackwell identified several factors that had made the Kansas frontier particularly vulnerable to the type of predatory behavior exhibited by the Bender family. The high mobility of the population meant that disappearances were often attributed to normal travel hazards rather than criminal activity. The lack of reliable communication between settlements made it difficult to identify patterns of disappearances that might indicate systematic predation. The professor's research also revealed that the Bender case was not entirely unique, with similar patterns of unexplained disappearances having occurred in other frontier regions during the same period. Professor Blackwell identified several cases in neighboring territories where isolated establishments had been associated with multiple disappearances, though none had been investigated as thoroughly as the Bender case. The comparative analysis suggested that the conditions of frontier life created opportunities for criminal activity that were less available in more settled regions. The combination of isolation, limited law enforcement, and the necessity of trusting strangers created vulnerabilities that sophisticated criminals could exploit with remarkable success. Professor Blackwell's investigation also examined the psychological factors that had enabled the Bender family to maintain their criminal activities while presenting themselves as respectable community members. His analysis suggested that the family members had developed sophisticated methods for compartmentalizing their behavior, maintaining normal social interactions while simultaneously planning and executing systematic murder. The psychological profiles developed by Professor Blackwell revealed that each family member had played specific roles in their criminal operations, with their apparent family relationships serving to mask a carefully coordinated criminal organization. The professor's analysis suggested that the relationships between the individuals who called themselves the Bender family were more complex and calculated than they had appeared to casual observers. Kate Bender emerged from Professor Blackwell's analysis as the most psychologically sophisticated member of the group, possessing a combination of intelligence, charm, and moral disconnection that made her uniquely effective at victim identification and manipulation. The professor's research suggested that Kate may have been the actual leader of the criminal operation, using her position as the family's daughter to deflect suspicion while maintaining operational control. The investigation revealed that Kate's alleged supernatural abilities were actually sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques designed to extract information from potential victims while making them feel special and important. Her seances and spiritual consultations provided perfect opportunities to gather intelligence about visitors' backgrounds, resources, and travel plans. Professor Blackwell's research also examined the methods that the Bender family had used to dispose of evidence and avoid detection by law enforcement. The family had apparently developed systematic procedures for eliminating traces of their crimes while maintaining the normal operation of their business, demonstrating a level of criminal sophistication that was unprecedented in frontier criminal history. The professor's analysis of the family's escape revealed that their departure from Kansas had been planned and prepared for months or years in advance. The speed and completeness of their disappearance suggested that they had anticipated the eventual discovery of their crimes and had developed contingency plans for avoiding capture. Professor Blackwell's research into the family's possible escape routes and subsequent activities identified several credible leads that had not been available to contemporary investigators. His analysis of travel patterns, communication networks, and criminal activities in other regions suggested possible connections to unexplained crimes in distant territories. The professor's investigation also revealed that the Bender family had maintained contact with other individuals who may have been involved in similar criminal activities. Evidence found at abandoned campsites and in the possessions of captured criminals suggested the existence of a network of individuals who shared information and resources while conducting predatory activities across the frontier regions. The possibility that the Bender family had been part of a larger criminal organization prompted Professor Blackwell to expand his research to include similar cases from throughout the American West. This expanded investigation revealed disturbing patterns that suggested systematic criminal activity extending far beyond the individual case of the Bender family. Professor Blackwell's comparative analysis identified several characteristics that were common to multiple cases of frontier predation, including the use of legitimate businesses as cover for criminal activity, the systematic targeting of vulnerable travelers, and the apparent coordination between criminal groups operating in different territories. The professor's research culminated in a comprehensive report that documented the Bender case as part of a broader phenomenon of organized criminal activity that had taken advantage of frontier conditions to conduct systematic predation on vulnerable populations. The report's conclusions challenged conventional understanding of frontier crime and highlighted the need for improved law enforcement coordination and investigative techniques. Professor Blackwell's recommendations included the establishment of specialized law enforcement units trained to identify and combat organized criminal activities that crossed territorial boundaries. His research demonstrated that traditional investigative methods were inadequate for dealing with sophisticated criminal operations that exploited geographic isolation and limited communication networks. The implementation of Professor Blackwell's recommendations led to significant changes in frontier law enforcement organization and procedures. Federal agencies began developing specialized capabilities for investigating complex criminal cases that involved multiple jurisdictions and extended periods of criminal activity. The academic impact of Professor Blackwell's research extended throughout American universities, establishing criminal psychology as a legitimate field of scientific inquiry and contributing to the development of new theoretical frameworks for understanding deviant behavior. The Bender case became a foundational study in multiple disciplines and influenced the evolution of modern criminal investigation techniques. The international scholarly interest in Professor Blackwell's research brought global attention to the challenges of maintaining law and order in rapidly expanding societies. The case became a subject of study in European universities and contributed to comparative analyses of criminal behavior in different cultural and geographic contexts. The technological innovations of the early 20th century enabled researchers to apply new analytical techniques to the evidence and documentation from the Bender case. Photography, fingerprinting, and improved communication systems provided tools for investigation and analysis that had not been available to 19th century investigators. The development of federal law enforcement agencies in the early 1900s provided new resources for investigating cold cases like the Bender mystery. The Bureau of Investigation, which would later become the FBI, took an active interest in the case and applied newly developed investigative techniques to the historical evidence. The federal investigation revealed additional evidence that had been overlooked or misinterpreted by earlier investigators. New analytical methods enabled investigators to identify patterns and connections that provided fresh insights into the family's methods and possible escape routes. The psychological analysis of the Bender case was advanced significantly by the development of modern psychiatric and psychological theories in the early 20th century. Researchers were able to apply new understanding of personality disorders and criminal psychology to develop more sophisticated profiles of the family members and their motivations. The forensic analysis of physical evidence from the Bender property was revolutionized by advances in scientific investigation techniques. Chemical analysis, ballistics, and other forensic sciences provided new information about the crimes, while confirming many aspects of the original investigation. The genealogical research into the Bender family's true identities was enhanced by improved record-keeping and communication systems that enabled investigators to trace family histories and personal connections across multiple states and territories. This research revealed that the names and relationships presented by the family were entirely fictitious, with their true identities remaining unknown. The search for surviving Bender family members continued throughout the early 20th century, with federal investigators following leads and alleged sightings in locations ranging from Mexico to Canada. Despite extensive efforts and significant resources, none of these investigations produced definitive results. The cultural impact of the Bender case expanded throughout American popular culture during the early 1900s, with the story inspiring numerous books, plays, and eventually films that helped establish many of the conventions of crime entertainment that continue to influence popular media today. The case became an archetypal example of frontier violence and criminal deception that shaped public understanding of American Western history. The story of the Bender family inn became synonymous with the dangers and uncertainties of frontier life, serving as a cautionary tale about the potential for evil to hide behind facades of respectability and hospitality. The legal precedents established during the Bender investigation continued to influence American criminal law throughout the 20th century. The procedures developed for handling complex criminal investigations involving multiple jurisdictions became standard practices that were applied to other major criminal cases. The educational impact of the Bender case extended throughout American academic institutions, with the case serving as a standard reference in multiple disciplines, including criminology, psychology, sociology, and American history. The case provided unique insights into human behavior under extreme conditions and contributed to the development of new theoretical frameworks for understanding criminal motivation. The preservation of evidence and documentation from the Bender case enabled continuous research and analysis that contributed to improved understanding of criminal behavior and investigative techniques. The case served as a testing ground for new analytical methods and provided validation for various theories about criminal psychology and organizational behavior. The modern digital age has enabled global collaboration among researchers interested in the Bender case with online communities and databases, providing unprecedented access to historical documents and evidence. Contemporary investigators continue to apply new technologies and analytical techniques to the case, maintaining hope that advances in forensic science may eventually provide answers to the enduring mysteries. The ongoing fascination with the Bender case reflects broader cultural interests in unsolved mysteries and criminal psychology that continue to drive popular entertainment and academic research. The case serves as a perfect intersection of historical significance, criminal psychology, and enduring mystery that appeals to diverse audiences across multiple generations. The ethical questions raised by the Bender case remain relevant to contemporary discussions about criminal justice, victim rights, and the responsibilities of researchers who study extreme criminal behavior. The case continues to challenge comfortable assumptions about human nature, while highlighting the importance of maintaining effective social institutions and community vigilance. The geographic legacy of the Bender case has created a permanent association between the specific location of their crimes and the broader themes of frontier violence and criminal deception. The site of the former inn has become a landmark in both Kansas history and American criminal history, attracting researchers, tourists, and curiosity seekers from around the world. The psychological insights derived from more than a century of study of the Bender case have contributed to improved understanding of criminal behavior patterns and the development of better methods for identifying and preventing similar crimes. The case continues to provide valuable information about the factors that enable individuals to overcome normal moral constraints and engage in systematic predation. In the vast solitude of the Kansas prairie, where the wind carries whispers of stories that time cannot erase, the empty plot where the Bender Inn once stood serves as a testament to the enduring power of unsolved mysteries to capture human imagination and challenge our understanding of the capacity for both good and evil that exists within the human heart. The inn that served more than supper has become a symbol of the eternal vigilance required to protect the innocent from those who would exploit trust and hospitality for the darkest of purposes, reminding us that some questions may never be answered, and some mysteries may never be solved, but the lessons they teach about human nature and the price of civilization must never be forgotten. The modern era has brought revolutionary advances in forensic science that have enabled contemporary investigators to re-examine the Bender case with unprecedented precision and sophistication. Dr. Margaret Thornfield of the Kansas Bureau of Investigation has led a team of specialists in applying 21st century analytical techniques to evidence that has been preserved in state archives for more than a century. Dr. Thornfield's team has utilized ground-penetrating radar to conduct comprehensive surveys of the former Bender property, revealing subsurface anomalies that were invisible to 19th century investigators. The radar imaging has identified additional burial sites and structural modifications that provide new insights into the scope and sophistication of the family's criminal operations. The application of advanced DNA analysis to preserved biological samples has enabled researchers to establish genetic profiles of the victims while also searching for potential relatives who might provide information about the Bender family's true identities. The genetic analysis has confirmed the identities of several victims while revealing that the family relationships presented by the Benders were indeed fictitious. The DNA evidence has also been compared against modern databases containing genetic information from millions of individuals, enabling investigators to search for potential descendants or relatives of the Bender family members. While these searches have produced several interesting leads, none have resulted in definitive identification of the family's true identities or ultimate fate. Dr. Thornfield's research has also employed advanced computer modeling to reconstruct the layout and operations of the Bender establishment, creating detailed visualizations that help contemporary investigators understand how the family conducted their criminal activities. The computer models have revealed the sophisticated planning and engineering that went into modifying the inn to serve their deadly purposes. The digital reconstruction has also enabled researchers to test various theories about the family's methods and escape routes, using geographical information systems and historical transportation data to evaluate the plausibility of different scenarios. These analyses have eliminated some previously accepted theories while identifying new possibilities that warrant further investigation. The modern investigation has also benefited from improved understanding of criminal psychology and behavioral analysis that has been developed through the study of contemporary serial criminals and organized crime operations. Criminal profilers have applied these modern techniques to the historical evidence from the Bender case, creating comprehensive psychological assessments that provide new insights into the family's motivations and operational methods. The behavioral analysis has revealed that the Bender operation exhibited characteristics that are consistent with what modern criminologists classify as organized serial killing conducted by a family unit. The systematic nature of their victim selection, the sophisticated methods used for disposal of evidence, and the careful maintenance of their legitimate business cover all indicate a level of criminal sophistication that was unprecedented for its time. The psychological profiles developed by modern analysts suggest that Kate Bender possessed characteristics that are associated with psychopathy, including superficial charm, manipulative behavior, and complete lack of empathy for her victims. Her alleged supernatural abilities are now understood to have been sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques designed to extract information while creating emotional bonds with potential victims. The modern analysis has also revealed that the family's escape from Kansas was far more carefully planned and executed than contemporary investigators had realized. The speed and completeness of their disappearance suggest months or years of preparation, including the establishment of alternative identities and escape routes that enabled them to vanish without leaving traceable evidence. Contemporary investigators have used modern transportation analysis and historical records to map possible escape routes that would have been available to the Bender family in 1873. The analysis has identified several plausible scenarios for their departure from Kansas and subsequent movements to other territories or even foreign countries. The investigation has also examined the possibility that the Bender family continued their criminal activities in other locations under different identities. Researchers have identified several cases of unexplained disappearances and suspicious criminal activity in various territories during the years following the family's escape from Kansas, though definitive connections have not been established. The modern study of the Bender case has revealed connections to other historical criminal cases that suggest the existence of networks or patterns of criminal activity that were not apparent to contemporary investigators. The analysis has identified similarities in methods, victim selection, and operational procedures that suggest possible coordination or communication between criminal groups operating in different territories. Dr. Thornfield's research has also examined the social and economic factors that enabled the Bender family's criminal activities to persist for several years without detection. The analysis has revealed that frontier conditions created unique vulnerabilities that sophisticated criminals could exploit, including limited law enforcement resources, poor communication between communities, and the necessity of trusting strangers in dangerous environments. The modern investigation has identified specific aspects of 19th century frontier society that made communities particularly susceptible to systematic predation. The high mobility of the population, the dangers associated with travel, and the limited investigative capabilities of local law enforcement all contributed to creating an environment where criminal organizations could operate with relative impunity. The research has also revealed that the Bender case was not unique in frontier criminal history, with similar patterns of systematic predation having occurred in other isolated regions during the same period. The analysis suggests that frontier conditions created opportunities for criminal activity that were less available in more settled and supervised communities. Contemporary researchers have also examined the long-term psychological and social impact of the Bender case on frontier communities and American society more broadly. The case created lasting changes in attitudes towards strangers, business relationships, and community security that influenced the development of social institutions and law enforcement practices throughout the American West. The cultural analysis has revealed that the Bender case helped establish many of the conventions and expectations of crime reporting and criminal investigation that continue to influence contemporary media and law enforcement practices. The case became an archetypal example of hidden danger and criminal deception that shaped public understanding of crime and criminal behavior. The modern study has also examined the role of gender in the Bender case, with particular attention to Kate Bender's position as both a woman operating in a male-dominated frontier society and as an apparently central figure in the family's criminal organization. The analysis has revealed that Kate's gender may have been a significant asset in their criminal operations, as social expectations about women's behavior made her less likely to be suspected of involvement in systematic violence. The investigation of Kate Bender's role has also revealed that her alleged supernatural abilities were part of a broader pattern of women in frontier communities claiming psychic or spiritual powers as a means of gaining social influence and economic independence. The analysis suggests that Kate may have adapted these legitimate practices for criminal purposes, using seances and spiritual consultations as covers for intelligence gathering and victim selection. Dr. Thornfield's research has also examined the economic aspects of the Bender family's criminal operations, analyzing their business model and financial practices to understand how they converted their criminal activities into sustainable income. The analysis has revealed that the family's legitimate in-business provided perfect cover for their criminal activities while also generating additional revenue that helped support their operations. The economic analysis has also revealed that the Bender family's criminal activities were remarkably profitable, with the value of goods and money stolen from their victims potentially providing them with wealth that far exceeded what they could have earned through legitimate frontier business activities. The analysis suggests that economic motivation was a significant factor in their decision to engage in systematic criminal activity. The modern investigation has also examined the technological and communication limitations that prevented contemporary law enforcement from effectively investigating and solving the Bender case. The analysis has revealed that 19th century investigators lacked the tools and resources necessary to conduct the kind of comprehensive investigation that would have been required to track down the escaped family members. The research has identified specific technological and procedural advances that might have enabled contemporary investigators to solve the case, including improved communication systems, better record-keeping practices, and more sophisticated investigative techniques. The analysis suggests that the Bender family's success in avoiding capture was largely due to their understanding of contemporary law enforcement limitations. Contemporary researchers have also applied modern criminological theories to analyze the Bender case as an example of organized criminal behavior and family-based criminal organizations. The analysis has revealed that the family's operational structure and methods were consistent with patterns observed in modern criminal organizations, suggesting that certain forms of criminal behavior follow consistent patterns regardless of historical period or technological context. The criminological analysis has also examined the role of social isolation and group dynamics in enabling the Bender family's criminal activities. The research suggests that their isolation from mainstream society and their tight family bonds created conditions that facilitated the development and maintenance of their criminal behavior over extended periods. Dr. Thornfield's team has also conducted extensive archival research in multiple states and territories to identify additional evidence or documentation that might provide new insights into the Bender case. The research has uncovered previously unknown documents and witness accounts that provide additional details about the family's activities and behavior. The archival research has also revealed that the Bender case influenced the development of law enforcement practices and criminal investigation techniques throughout the American West. The case prompted improvements in interagency communication, evidence collection procedures, and victim identification methods that became standard practices in later criminal investigations. The modern study has also examined the international dimensions of the Bender case, investigating the possibility that the family had connections to criminal activities or organizations in other countries. The research has identified several potential connections to European criminal organizations, though definitive evidence has not been established. The international investigation has also examined immigration records and ship manifests to trace possible escape routes that might have taken the Bender family to foreign countries where they could have assumed new identities and continued their criminal activities. The research has identified several plausible scenarios for international escape, though none have been definitively confirmed. Contemporary investigators have also used advanced genealogical research techniques to search for potential descendants or relatives of the Bender family members. The research has employed DNA analysis, historical records, and modern genealogical databases to trace possible family connections that might provide information about the family's true identities or ultimate fate. The genealogical research has revealed several promising leads that have been pursued by investigators, including potential family connections in various states and foreign countries. However, none of these investigations have produced definitive results or conclusive evidence about the family's true identities or final disposition. The modern investigation has also examined the possibility that some or all of the Bender family members were eventually captured or died under circumstances that were not connected to their criminal activities. The research has investigated various claims and legends about the family's fate, though none have been substantiated with reliable evidence. Dr. Thornfield's research has also contributed to broader understanding of criminal behavior and investigative techniques that are applicable to contemporary criminal cases. The analysis has provided insights into the methods used by organized criminal groups and the factors that enable systematic criminal activity to persist over extended periods. The educational impact of the modern Bender research has extended throughout academic institutions and law enforcement agencies, with the case serving as a model for understanding historical criminal behavior and developing improved investigative techniques. The research has contributed to training programs for criminal investigators and has influenced the development of new theoretical frameworks for understanding organized crime. The technological innovations applied to the Bender case have also contributed to the development of new forensic techniques and analytical methods that are being applied to other cold cases and contemporary criminal investigations. The case has served as a testing ground for new technologies and has helped validate various analytical approaches. The public interest in the modern Bender investigation has been sustained through various media productions and educational programs that have helped maintain awareness of the case, while also highlighting the advances in forensic science and criminal investigation that have been achieved over the past century and a half. The ongoing research into the Bender case continues to attract new investigators and researchers who apply the latest technological and analytical advances to the historical evidence. The case remains an active area of investigation that benefits from continuous improvements in forensic science and criminal psychology. The collaboration between academic researchers, law enforcement agencies, and amateur investigators has created a comprehensive approach to studying the Bender case that combines multiple perspectives and areas of expertise. This collaborative approach has produced more comprehensive understanding of the case than would have been possible through individual efforts. The digital preservation of evidence and documentation from the Bender case has created permanent archives that will enable future researchers to apply new analytical techniques as they are developed. The comprehensive documentation ensures that the case will continue to provide insights into criminal behavior and investigative methods for future generations. In the endless expanse of the Kansas prairie, where the horizon meets the sky in an unbroken line that speaks of infinity and mystery, the legacy of the Bender family continues to challenge our understanding of human nature and the eternal struggle between good and evil that defines the human condition. Therein, which promised warmth and sanctuary to weary travelers, became instead a symbol of the deception and danger that can lurk behind the most innocent appearances, reminding us that vigilance and wisdom are the eternal prices of safety and civilization in a world where evil can wear the mask of kindness and hospitality can conceal the darkest of intentions.